There we go. Okay, well, hi everybody. You're watching probably from the page that we've created for this amazing conversation that we're about to have. I'm personally super excited for this, not only because I love the whole conversation of like understanding each other in our 11 years of marriage, but also because we've been talking about this 5 love languages forever. I think like since I was at the university, it's just a book that it's always been there. And now in business, we've even carried that out. So what a great opportunity to be here with you, Dr. Gary Chapman, on this conversation. And yeah, very thankful for this gift that you're giving everybody of having this conversation and getting to know you even a little bit more before our event in April.
So we were just chatting. You've been married now how long, Dr. Chapman?
63 years. But my wife says that's impossible because she's only 49.
That's right. That's right. And when did you first start working on the love languages? How long has it been? How long is in that journey?
Well, the book actually came out in 1992, but I had discovered the concept at least 10 years earlier. And I've been using it for at least 10 years before the book was ever published. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, what was her involvement in that? Were you testing things with her and trying to test out different, I don't know, ways of charming her, but that didn't work? Or?
No, I actually discovered it in the counseling office with many couples. Her role in that book, she's the editor of all of my books.
Wow.
So before we ever go to the publisher, she has edited them. She's an English major. And my publisher tells me, your manuscripts are the cleanest we ever receive. And I say, there's a reason for that. Her name is Carolyn.
I love that.
But the love language itself, I discovered in counseling. So many couples would sit in my office, and one of them would say, I just feel like, he doesn't love me, or she doesn't love me. And we're just like roommates living in the same house. He does his thing, I do my thing, but there's nothing going on between us. And I just feel empty inside. I just don't know how long I can go on. And they would say something along those lines, and the spouse would respond by saying, I don't understand that. I do everything I can to show you that I love you. Why, I don't know why you wouldn't feel loved, and I don't know what else I could possibly do. And when I would ask them, what do you do to show your love to her or him? I remember one man, he said, well, Dr. Chapman, look, I get home from work before she does. I start the evening meal. Sometimes I actually have it ready when she gets home. He said, if not, she'll help me, and then we eat. And after we eat, I wash the dishes every night after dinner. And on Thursday night, I vacuum the floors. Saturday, I wash the car, I mow the grass, I help her with the laundry. He went on, and I was beginning to wonder, what does this woman do? It just sounded like he did everything. And he said, I don't know what else I could do. I looked back at her, and she said, he's right. He's a hard-working man. She said, but we don't ever talk. We haven't talked in 20 years. He's always washing the car, mowing the grass, always doing something. And I realized, and I heard this similar stories over and over, that here was a sincere husband. In his mind, he was loving his wife the best way he knew how, but he wasn't connecting with her. So eventually, after hearing that over and over, I said, there's got to be a pattern to this. And so I actually sat down and read several years of notes that I made when I was counseling and asked myself the question, when someone said, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me, what did they want? What were they complaining about? And their answers fell in 5 categories. And later I called them the 5 love languages. I started using the concept in my counseling. If you want her to feel love, you've got to learn how to speak love in her language. If you want him to feel love, you've got to learn to speak his language. And I would help couples discover their language, challenge them to try it. And sometimes they'd come back in 2 weeks and say, Gary, this is changing everything. I mean, the whole thing's different now. And then I started teaching it to groups of couples, and the same thing would happen. It was probably at least 5 years later that I just thought, if I could put this concept in a book, and write it in the language of the common person, leave out psychological terms that many people would not understand. Maybe I could help a lot of people that I would never have time to see in my office. So that's where the love language book came from.
I love that. I love that. And we're going to get to some of the business principles and how this ties over, and especially entrepreneurship and marriage here in a second. But 30 years, what's shifted and changed in the last 30 years with different cultures and different types of people? Have you seen, are there elements that have changed? I've often said that you should add a love language of food, because I feel like that's my wife's love language. But what has developed over the last couple of years?
I'm hoping that by the event, maybe we have that insertion in there.
In the book.
In the book.
I would say in response to that idea that if you make the food for her, that's an act of service. If you go out and buy it for her, it's a gift. So it's a dialect of one of the other languages.
I got you. There you go. There you go.
Definitely not.
What has changed, I think what has changed in the last 20, 30 years is technology. And there's a plus to that, but there's a minus to that. The plus is that we can do things we could never do before. For example, we can be half a world away. And this is one of the things that led me to write the book for military couples on how to speak the love language when you're deployed. Because no matter where you are in the world, I remember a lady said to me, she said, Dr. Chapman, she said, his love language is physical touch. Well, you'd think that'd be impossible, half a world away. She said, but I put my hand on a sheet of paper and traced it, and then I mailed it to him with a little note that said, put your hand on my hand. I want to hold your hand. Well, that was back in the days when we didn't have computers. Right. And he said, every time I put my hand on that paper, I felt her, And so there are ways to do that. But computer makes it a lot easier, because now you can FaceTime. You can do what we're doing today. You're looking at each other while we're talking. Half a world away, we can do that. And so we can spend quality time with the person. We can give words of affirmation to the person. We can order gifts through Amazon and have them sent to the house, even if we live half a world away. So all of these love languages, it's a plus. Technology is a plus. On the other hand, technology can be a tremendous distraction to a marital relationship. I mean, how many times, and most people can identify with this, you've been having a conversation with your spouse, and one of your phone rings, your cell phone rings, and one of you picks it up and says, oh, hey, John, how are you doing? Hey, Mary, how are you doing? And they start a conversation with somebody else. And what do? You get up and walk out and say, well, I guess that conversation's over. If you're a quality time person, that was like a dagger in your heart. You were saying somebody out there is more important than you. So, the obsession with technology and allowing technology to control us rather than our controlling technology has had a tremendous impact, both positively and negatively on relationships.
Wow.
Interesting.
We're like thinking probably of all the times that we've been in a dinner and like with our phones, because it's really hard, especially, which is one of the questions that we have next on marriage and business. I think like marriages probably get, put on like even a harder, I don't know, like, would you say that? Like just, it's a lot harder once you're in business together. I mean, marriage is already a lot of intentional work, right?
One of the things that we've talked a lot about, especially as entrepreneurship, as you're just getting started, and you can think back maybe to the days of just getting the book going, and I don't know, a lot of people are struggling, and most, in fact, statistically, most entrepreneurs are struggling, and potentially the added weight of stress along those ways, which I guess brings into like, okay, now you got to be more intentional with these love languages. So there's like two scenarios there. One is we've got a lot of people in our group, a lot of people coming to this event where the husband and the wife is both in the business together, right? Which means they're constantly talking business ideas, and we struggled when we go home. Well, our mission, what we believe God has put us on this earth to do, is part of the business. Our mission is the business. Our work is the business. So what do we talk about at home? Well, a lot of times the business, right? And so the pluses and minuses of this, right? And so have you had, what has been your experience of working with couples that are working together versus separate? And then I want to chat a little bit about just entrepreneurship as a whole and things we could do as entrepreneurs, battling all of this craziness all day long and then switching paths or switching, up when you go home and trying to put all that away.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the negative things with couples working together is when they disagree about things related to the business.
Yeah.
And they haven't learned how to solve disagreements. So
That's
they can get arguing with each other over business things, and it can be detrimental. That's why learning how to solve conflicts is so important in a marriage relationship, and especially if you're working together. Now, that's not always a problem because sometimes people, they each knows what they're doing in the business and they don't have that kind of conflicts. But a lot of times they do. And that's why learning how to respect each other's ideas and not try to convince them that they're wrong. Because if you convince the other person, that your spouse, that they're wrong, I mean, you won the argument, they lost. It's no fun to live with a loser. So why would we create one, But I think the other factor, putting that aside, I think we have to separate our time in the business, working with the business, with our personal lives at home. And they have to be distinct. If we simply take business at home every night, and we're at home at night discussing business matters every night, where's the personal time? And what about the rest of life? What about things each of you have an interest in that are not related to the business? And if you have children, how about the children? So it's learning how to, I think, leave work at work when you work together, and then go home and let's enjoy our relationship. If it's just us, and with our children, let's enjoy our children together. Let's think about things we would like, books we'd like to read, ideas we'd like to discuss, places we'd like to go, friends we'd like to have, just discussing all of life with each other. And I think if you make those clear distinctions, you're far more likely to do well in the business and do well at home. But if you let the business go home with you, and that's basically all you discuss, then, the marital relationship is going to suffer from that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, because I saw, by the way, we're going to have questions at the end, guys. So I know that a lot of you are watching and you're probably absorbing a lot of it. As something pops into your mind, just write it in the comments, because we would love to be able to address that. One of the questions that we have in there that I was just thinking about myself is, how do you address, like, let's say that his time is quality time. It's not, by the way, but let's say his time, like his love language is quality time, and mine is not at all. Like, that's not something that comes natural to me. What do you recommend in those situations, as you're having, marriages like work together, especially, or, even outside of like just business, just on a daily basis? What would you recommend doing if their love language is completely different to like maybe what I'm used to, or how I show my affection?
Well, I think that's where we have to come back to our attitude and whether we value our marriage relationship as being priority. And if so, recognizing that one of our deepest emotional needs is the need to feel loved by our spouse. And if this is their language, then I've got to find a way to do it. And I had a man say to me one time, he said, Dr. Chapman, my wife and I read your book. We took the quiz. Her language is acts of service. But I'm going to tell you and her, if it's going to take my washing dishes and my vacuuming floors for her to feel loved, she can forget that. And what I said to him was, that's your choice.
Yeah.
If you want to live with a wife who has an empty love tank, that's your choice. I said, love is a choice. I'm giving you information on how to meet that need. You choose whether you want to do it or not.
Do you find that that's a conflict a lot, Dr. Chapman? And like, oh, family's number one for me. Okay. You spent 2 hours with them a day and you were on your phone 80% of the time. Like, I feel like in society, I get this even with entrepreneurs, man, I want nothing more than to grow my business. Well, how many people have you cold called or, called? Well, oh, no, and I just don't, whatever the case may be. Do we have a little bit of a problem in our society of like, or have you seen this change where what we believe our priority, what we'd like to think our priority is not in fact our priority? Or
Yes, I think that happens often, and we're sincere. In our mind, families first, marriage and families first. But in our practice, by the way we invest our time and our energy,
Mm.
it shows that business is first. And that's why many wives, it may be their husband, it could be the wife the other way around, but the other person feels, left out.
Mm.
And so, and I've seen men, we've all seen this, men in particular, who make it in their business, make it to the top, but they make it without their spouse.
Mm.
Because somewhere along the line, the spouse gave up, said,
Scares me to death.
I can't live like this, Because life's meaning ultimately is not found in things, it's found in relationships.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean things are not important. I mean, business is important, and we all need to work, and work is a wonderful thing to be doing. But there has to be a balance, and we're the only ones that can change that. And so, if our spouse language is quality time, we've got to evaluate what we're doing, how we're spending our time, and make some decisions on when can we have quality time together. And listen, the entrepreneur, you get to choose your own schedule. You're the boss. You can choose how you spend your time. And so it's just a matter of recognizing the value of speaking their language and then choosing to find a way to make time to do it. And yes, if their number one, if their primary love language is number 5 for you, you don't know how that would be so important. It's a learning curve, but you have to understand that whatever your love language is and the way you feel when your spouse speaks your love language, that's the way they feel when you speak their love language. So if we understand how important it is to us to feel loved, and then we have an idea of how important it is to them to learn how to speak their love language.
Dr. Chapman, how do you feel about people? As an entrepreneur, my first instinct is to systemize this. So my wife's love language is quality time. So what do? Every Friday, date night is 6 to 9 o'clock. We make sure there's a babysitter, but it's like, it almost becomes a task than a thought. Now, I feel like it's worked for us for the most part, but I have heard people go like, well, that's not very special if it's every single week, or that's not very thought provocative. Have you seen people systemize these things in
I
a way?
also think that they haven't seen your calendar to address it. That is
People, I mean, I've literally seen, I also have, no phone 4 to 8, these are my kid time, right? I've seen people be distraught that I have to, the audacity or something like this. Have you seen systemization of these love languages? Is that a problem, or is that that's just a tactic as long as it works?
I think it can be effective. The question is, does it work for the spouse? Mm-hmm. If her language is quality time and having a date night regular on the schedule meets that need for her, wonderful. But if she would rather have 30 minutes a day, along the way, then that would be more meaningful. So it's a matter of trying to figure out, how do you feel, honey? Is this? I really want to love you in the best possible way. So I think, and we can get into just doing routines, but if we keep in the back of our mind, whatever I'm doing here, it's for the benefit of my spouse, to meet their need for love. I want them to know that I love them. And so that keeps it from becoming just a routine, because it's very meaningful to them. And the time we spend together on a date night, for example, very, very meaningful to them. And that's why I want to keep doing it. And that's why I want to keep, realizing how important this is in our relationship.
Now, we have applied the love languages not only in our marriage, right, but there's other areas, right, with our kids, in our day-to-day at work. Let's talk a little bit about the workplace. You did a book specifically on this, right? I think it's focused on appreciation in the workplace. Can you talk to us a little bit about how important it is to understand each other's love language from a workplace a scenario type of perspective, what prompted you to write that book? What were some of the cases that you have seen, you know, as you're walking with people along the way in building their businesses? Culture is in leadership, right, is a major component of success. I think in most of the people that we look up to, they have an amazing relationship with their employees, and that's something we really strive to do even in any of the businesses that we have. What are some of the things that you have seen in the workplace? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I wrote that book with Dr. Paul White. He is a Christian psychologist who had spent 20 years working with business leaders. And he came to me and said, Gary, I think we need to take the love languages to work. And I said, why? And he gave me 2 research projects. One indicated that 70% of the people in this country who have a job say they felt little appreciation at work. 64% of the people that left their job and went to another job say they left primarily because they didn't feel appreciated where they were. And when he said that to me and showed that to me, I said, well, okay, I agree with you then. It's a real need. But I said, we've got to do some research and make sure that it works. So he went into all kinds of businesses, all the way from hair salons to construction companies, and gave the employees a job satisfaction test. Then he shared the concept of the appreciation languages. It's just taking the love languages to work, but we're calling it appreciation at work because it's different from family relationships. There's the same emotional need to feel valued as a person. Mm-hmm. And they would take what we call the MBA inventory, motivating by appreciation inventory, so that they learn their primary appreciation language, their secondary appreciation language, and the one that's least important to them. And then they shared that with all the people that they interacted with on the job and challenged them to speak each other's language. If they want to share appreciation, here's the best way to do it for John, or the best way to do it for Mary. And then I think he sent out a little reminder about every 6 weeks, just keep this on the front burner. Went back a year later, did another job satisfaction test, and in every case, it was statistically improved. And that's when I said, okay, let's write the book. It works. And so we did. Now, the only place we ran into pushback was with the HR people when we got to physical touch. They would say, no, we don't touch at work.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we heard it so much that Dr. White said to me, Gary, I think maybe we ought to leave that out.
Well, I wonder though, it's sorry to interrupt you, but I wonder how does that work? Because there are some people that do appreciate like Latin America, for example, from Nicaragua. In Latin America, some people were really big on hugs and, you know, that, which is probably not very common in some other countries. So like, how do you approach that obstacle?
Yeah, well, that's why I said to him, Dr. White, remember, before I studied counseling, I did a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in cultural anthropology, studying cultures all over the world and how they're organized, how they function. And I said, there are no human cultures where people do not touch. Humans touch. Now, there are appropriate touches and there are inappropriate touches in the workplace. I said, but we can't just leave it out. But what we did discover later on, after we had thousands of people take the MBA inventory, almost no one had physical touch as their primary language. So we did eventually leave it out of the MBA inventory, but we discussed it in the book. And one of the things we say in the book is, if you see a fellow employee touching other people, like high fives or pat on the back, it's okay to give them a high five or a pat on the back. But if you don't ever see them touch anyone, we would advise you not to touch them.
Yeah.
And if you touch them and they stiffen up, don't ever touch them again. And then we do discuss in the book, you know, sexual abuse and physical abuse that take place in the workplace. And that cannot be allowed. Whenever that's discovered, it cannot be allowed to go on. And so we discussed that very, very in depth because it's a real problem in our culture. sexual abuse at work, and physical abuse. People that have got anger inside and they just lash out at people in the workplace. So we do deal with that in the book. But as I said, almost no one had it as the primary appreciation language. But other than that, when they take the MBA, they identify what their primary appreciation language is, what their secondary is, and one that's least important to them. That kind of information is valuable. All the people you work with knows that. Then if they want to express appreciation, they know how to do it in an effective way. And we also deal with the fact that if you don't appreciate a person, don't try to fake it. I mean, they're going to know if you're sincere or not. And we deal with, what if you don't appreciate somebody in the workplace? What do you do if you don't appreciate them? Well, I think you ask why. Why don't I appreciate them? Because sometimes it's a personality trait, They just talk so loud, everybody in the world can hear them talking. I just wish they'd calm down, Sometimes a personality trait, sometimes it's something else. And sometimes maybe they're not really getting the job done. And that's why you don't appreciate them. Well, maybe they need more training, or maybe something's going on in their life that needs attention. So, we deal with a lot of things in that book that will help people create a positive emotional environment in the workplace.
And guys, we'll have a lot of these books at the event, but I highly recommend, if y'all haven't read the book, highly recommend it. And Dr. Chapman, I think this is, people have more opportunities to move and leave work than ever before, obviously, right? And as you said, how we build that emotional connection with our team so that they feel like they belong and are loved. When I think of Hite and our growth, I think this is a cornerstone of how we just weren't smart enough and we couldn't pay enough and but we loved, we try to love people and serve them as much as we could. How valuable is it though in the workplace to hire people that meet your own personal love language? So for example, again, and I'll preface this, we grew our company in Latin America. So we had 100 people in an office there. My love language is touch. We kiss on the cheek and we hug, and I'm a very babies were in our office and we'd hold the babies and just, these types of things. Right. So, but if you're as a CEO, your love language is whatever the case may be, quality time or words of affirmation or something to this nature. How important is it to hire people that also have that same love languages as you?
Well, I don't know that would be a decisive factor. I think there are other factors when you're hiring someone, that relate to their ability in the particular area for which you are hiring them. So I don't think it's necessary that the person, speaks your language just naturally. It is important that they know the appreciation language of the CEO, because in many, many companies, the president or the CEO can be the loneliest person in the company because people don't have the relationship with them that they, would like to have. And let's face it, the larger the company gets, the more difficult it is for the CEO or the president to have a relationship with everybody in the workplace. And sometimes they can't have it with everybody. But certainly with the people that we interface with, it's important that on every level. And that's why when we wrote the book, we didn't necessarily write it for leaders, start this in your company, though obviously that's certainly positive and we encourage that. But this can start anywhere in the company. 6 people who work together can read the book, take the quiz, they get each other's information, they're learning how to affirm each other and appreciate each other. And then somebody else hears about it. And let's do that. It can start anywhere in the company. It doesn't have to start at the top. But obviously, if it's a smaller company, it's nice if the leader has the vision for this and knows how important this is. And if so, then this concept can be a great help to that leader in creating that kind of environment.
I want to encourage people to read this or just, even understanding this. There's been several times I've got several team members right now after reading this book, and I got introduced, by the way, I've been reading the 5 love languages since I was in college here. They forced us to read the book for the first time. And I was, this is a college student. So I wasn't too excited about it, but it was great. And I got introduced to appreciation at work though a year ago, and it just made. I've got an assistant who words of affirmation is her love language, and it is not mine. It is. I mean, I don't even. It's a really hard for me to go out of my way. Man, I really appreciate you, Dr. Chapman. I just really want to just take a moment to thank you, and that was her way. And she would get worried, and I finally started to realize after reading this book, because every 2 or 3 weeks, Dr. Chapman, she'd come to me like, JC, is everything okay? Are you good? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, but we hadn't had any, time together. You haven't had any da 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 da. And I'm like, again, that's opposite for me. I'm not even thinking about this. The moment I realized, I put it on my calendar, Dr. Chapman.
Yeah.
Every 4 or 5 days, it was on repeat twice a week, just 5 minutes, right. I won't say her name, right assistant. Some of you may know her that's listening to the call, right assistant, just how much you appreciate her. Hope she's having a great day. Check in on the baby. And it was that simple. It changed everything. Right. And again, some people, it's gifts. Right. And so I found out with those, it doesn't even have to be big. It's like a $5 gift card. And they're like, oh, this is so great. I'm like, you make $100,000 a year. Like, what is this? But was their love language. And like, how easy is that once you take the time to get to know, these, I'm not going to say simple, but simple, I will say simple concepts that are really deeply rooted. And anyway, it's exciting.
Yeah.
I have a question on progress of an evolution, I guess, of this love languages, whether it's at work or in marriage. Do you feel people's love languages changes over time? You've been married for over 60 years. We've been married for 11. I feel like we just recently in the last years were able to understand better our love languages. Do they happen to evolve when you're married for 60 years? Have you seen that happening?
Well, I think there is a sense in which the primary love language, like many personality traits, tend to stay with us for a lifetime. But having said that, yes, I think there are seasons of life in which another love language may jump to the top. For example, a mother who has 2 preschool children, acts of service may not have been her primary love language, but during those years, it's probably going to jump to the top because she's overwhelmed.
Yeah.
The same principle would apply in the workplace. For example, gifts or acts of service may not be a coworker's primary appreciation language. But if their spouse is in the hospital and you take food over to them, which is both a gift and an act of service, they will never forget it, because at that particular juncture in their life of what was going on, that spoke loudly to them. Or let's say a family member dies of one of your work associates, and you take time to go to that funeral, even though you didn't even know their parents, but you go to that funeral because of them and you value them, they will never forget that you did that. And so that can be, and that essentially is really quality time. You're taking 2 or 3 hours, sometimes longer if you have to drive, to do something with them and suffer or feel empathy for them as they're going through their grief. So yes, I think there are circumstances, individual circumstances where a love language and an appreciation language, another one may jump to the top. Yeah.
You've emphasized the importance of apology. So flipping the script on this last question, right? And forgiveness alongside love, right? For a couple who understands their love languages, how do they integrate this concept of apology in there?
Well, I've sometimes said that I believe that there's 2 essentials to long-term healthy relationships, whether it's marriage or whether it's work relationships. The first is that we meet each other's need for love, emotional need for love. That's what we've been talking about. The second is that we deal effectively with our failures, because none of us are perfect. And from time to time, we do things, say things, or fail to do things or say things that hurt the other person and thus hurt our relationship. And what it does is it puts an emotional block in a wall between the two of us. And that block does not go away with the passing of time. It only goes away when we choose to apologize and they choose to forgive us. And that removes the barrier. And now we can go forward in our relationship. Yeah. And that's why apology is so important. But what we discovered is that not only do people have a primary love language, they tend to have a primary apology language. By which I mean, what one person considers to be a sincere apology is not what another person considers to be a sincere apology. So he says to her, "I'm sorry, honey." And she's thinking, "You certainly are sorry." He thinks he's apologizing. She thinks he's giving character report. In her mind, "I'm sorry" is not an apology. In her mind, she has some other things that ought to be said or done. And so what we discovered by asking thousands of people 2 questions: when you apologize, what do you typically say or do? Second question: when someone is apologizing to you, what do you want to hear them say or do? And their answers fell into 5 categories. I promise you, we were not looking for 5, even though I like 5. And we call them the 5 apology languages. And that book has been extremely helpful, both with marriages and in the workplace, of people understanding and talking about, in a close relationship. Well, what were you taught growing up was an apology? Because that's where we typically learn to apologize, is our parents told us, go tell sister you're sorry. So we say, "I'm sorry." So, but we have different parents and different ideas of what a sincere apology looks like. And so if we want to apologize, we want to do it in a way that's meaningful to the other person. And that's the whole key to that book and to that concept.
I don't think I ever thought about that approach of understanding how the other person receives an apology early in the marriage. Like, I don't think we've ever even discussed that, which is so true. Sometimes, and we were at church, we were just talking about this in a marriage class, that sometimes apologies feel like just a pass, to just like move on to the next thing, and kind of like an exit pass for the person that was able to, did the wrongdoing, and how important it is to really understand how the other person understands. Most of the time is based on the actual experience and the change that really shows cases that apology, right? So that's
just those of you listening, right? Expressing regret, accepting responsibility, genuinely repenting, making restitution, and requesting forgiveness. Those are the 5. I thought physical touch was still one of the ones on the list. Personally, that applies to all languages. It's really simple for me, to be honest with you, but it's interesting.
Oh, JC, that's awesome. Thinking more about just faith and going back into marriages specifically, right? Your work has been, from what we've seen, strongly rooted in this idea of love being about service and not selfishness, right? Like just being focused on that service. For couples that find themselves, especially in the day-to-day, I feel like we're all going so fast all the time. And we're so focused on, at least from a social media standpoint, on success and financial stability and all these things. How would you encourage people to maybe even rediscover the joy of serving one another first, as we're focusing on these big goals that we have for each other? But how do we encourage each other to rediscover the joy of serving one another? And how does this align with a faith-driven purpose in their marriage and maybe even business if they work together?
Well, I think at the very heart of the Christian lifestyle, to be sure, is serving other people. Jesus himself said, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and then to give his life a ransom for others." And he's our model. Mm-hmm. Any successful relationship is going to require an attitude of service. Now, here's the good news. We choose our attitude. We don't choose our emotions. Emotions are simply our responses to what's going on in life. So sometimes we have negative feelings. Sometimes we have positive feelings, depending on what's going on around us. But we choose our attitude. And you mentioned the two sides of the story. One is an attitude of love, which essentially is, I want to enrich the lives of the people that I interface with. This is huge in business. The other side, the opposite side, is what I call selfishness. I want what I want. You see, the man who said to me, if it's going to take my washing dishes and vacuuming floors for her to feel loved, she can forget that. He was expressing his own selfishness. I'm not doing anything I don't want to do. It's selfish. And in business, people either lean toward one of those attitudes or the other attitude. And the most successful business people are those who have an attitude of service. Not only do they want to serve their clients and do something good for their clients, but they want to serve the people that work for them and work with them and work under their supervision. Mm-hmm. And that's the healthiest place to live. It's the healthiest organization, and it's the healthiest and most successful business. But there are people in business who have a selfish attitude. For example, we had a man say to us, he was the owner of a construction company. And he said to us, when we tried to present this idea to him, he said, I don't care whether my men feel appreciated or not. I pay them well to get the job done. They get the job done, fine. They don't get the job done, I fire them. I don't care whether they feel appreciated or not. You understand what he's saying? Selfishness. I'm in this business to make money. I don't care about the people that work for me and how they feel. So we either lean in one of these two directions, and as again, I want to emphasize, we choose our attitude. And for the Christian, there's no question as to what God's plan is. His plan is to choose an attitude of love.
I like that. Pride, it gets in the way of us a lot. Business, running a family business where we're all in this together, right? Again, going back to Karen and I together, I know there's a lot of people on the call that spouses are involved, but then even siblings involved, right? You get all of this different type of dynamic going on. Almost this, I can't fire Karen. That'd be really tough on our business, right? And so the essentialness of understanding these concepts to try to keep it, healthy and exciting, right? One, how do I love? And then how do I forgive? Both of these, right? How do I show appreciation? These are mixed over, right? Because she's also my wife. So I'm going love languages, but also appreciation languages almost at the same time again. Is there any frameworks that you've seen like beyond this to take it to okay, I understand the love languages, but how do I take it to another level, I guess, with my spouse?
Well, on the love languages, we just most recently have put together a premier assessment.
Okay.
And it gives you not only your appreciation language, but it deals with the dialects of that language that are most important to your spouse. And it also deals with personality and how that interfaces with the love language concept.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited about that. Les and Leslie Parrott, you may know them, but they're psychologists and marriage and family counselors from the state of Washington. But they helped put that premier assessment together, and it's available at 5lovelanguages.com. There's a free quiz on the love languages that will give you your primary love language, but this goes much deeper with that. And I think it's helping a lot of people, learn the nuances of like what are the dialects of that language that are most important for them.
We're going to ask maybe one or two more questions. And we gathered so many. I think there was like 100 questions submitted from you guys. So I appreciate that. We're going to go like one or two more and then we'll open it up. So anybody like have a question right there in the chat, we'll get it kind of live based on what is said. I know we've got 4 or 5 already in the pipeline here, but
I love the comment section because I see like JC, don't fire Karen. These people know us for a long time. I wanted to ask specifically on some love languages at work, especially like acts of service and quality time. As business owners, those are characteristics that drive our day to day, not only on our marriage or personal relationships, but sometimes even relationships with our clients. How can we prevent? What are some of the ideas that you have, Dr. Chapman, on how do we prevent burnout personally and even professionally when our love language is acts of service or quality time, just like being there for other people? How do we prevent that burnout?
For example, my assistant that I was mentioning, if I had 10 of those around me, I would go nuts, Dr. Chapman. I just don't have enough time or energy to spread that kind of love,
But
right?
I also know of other
Appreciation.
business owners that, they get so invested in the well-being of their clients that sometimes a lot of the times they go above and beyond where it costs them, where they're not charging for that, so it affects them on a professional level. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we all have to recognize we have limits. We can't help every person that we encounter in life. But the people that are closest to us and work closest to us, just like in the family, of course, they're the most important because that's family. People that work closely with us outside the family are people that are important to us. So I think we have to recognize that. And that's why we want to encourage everybody in the organization to be sensitive to the love language, appreciation language of the people around them. It's not up for us as the CEO or the leader to have to meet everybody, fill everybody's love tank or everybody's appreciation tank. We can't do that. But we can create an environment where that is being done, where the people that are interfacing with each other on a regular basis are expressing appreciation, to them. And I think that's the key, and to recognize that the leader can't do that with every single person, but we can create that kind of environment in the workplace.
I'm gonna attach here in a second the MBA assessment in here as well. I encourage you guys to go take that. But go ahead.
In one of your books, you describe this notion of like marriage is kind of like a season. We go through seasons, right? I think you mentioned it's kind of like moving from like winter to spring to summer. There's like seasons that we go through based on where the relationship is at, or, the things that are happening, for couples that run business together. And I think it's just such an interesting topic for us because we get asked about this all the time. How would you recommend them recognizing and agreeing upon the season that they're in and what they're experiencing? Is that something that you feel like you need to be constantly in communication of like understanding what season you're in, especially if like, and the differences, right? Because sometimes a partner one of them might feel like we're in the season of winter and the other one's like in summer, like what do you like, how do we come up about the seasons? How do we understand what season we're in, and how can we have that communication as a marriage?
Yeah, what I'm doing in that book is the 4 seasons of marriage is just using the seasons as a metaphor. Spring marriage, for example, we most of us enter marriage in the spring. I mean, we're just so excited. This is so wonderful. Emotionally, we are with these positive feelings for each other. But it's not the idea that we start off in spring, and if we live long enough, we get to winter. That's not the idea. We can be in spring one year and something else the other year. The summer marriages are relaxed. We've worked through some of our misunderstandings. We've learned how to work as a team, and we're just enjoying life. It's just really, really pleasant. A fall marriage looks good on the outside. People who are looking at us from the outside think, "Oh, what a wonderful couple." But if they don't do something differently, in 6 weeks, the leaves are going to fall off, and it's going to be wintertime. And a winter marriage is cold and harsh, like we're hunkered down in the igloo. And so the theme of that book is how to spend more time in spring and summer. So what we try to deal with is what are the issues, that take you, if you're in a winter marriage, what takes you back to move toward a spring marriage? And a part of that we discussed already. It's asking yourself, where have I failed that has brought us to this place? By nature, what we're thinking is, you're the problem. If they would just change, we could go back to spring, you know. That's the way we all are by nature. But we can't change our spouse, but we can change ourselves. So the question is, what do I need to apologize for? And what do I need to be doing differently than I'm doing? And we have an influence on our spouse when we take that approach. We can't change them, but we either have a positive influence or a negative influence on the other person. So if we don't start with ourselves, we're missing a great opportunity to have a positive influence on our spouse or on the other person in the workplace. So yeah, that book has helped a lot of couples, gain some ideas in terms of how we can spend more time in spring and summer, because obviously that's much more enjoyable than fall and winter.
Have you? There was a question here in the chat. Have you read the book His Needs, Her Needs?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you feel it's like? How does it relate to the 5 love languages? Have you seen it? I know you've seen some correlation, read about it in terms of men and women, the different love languages, but how do the books compare in terms of?
Well, I don't think there's a direct correlation between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his needs and her needs, and not everybody falls into those categories. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are men that don't fall into the categories, right? And there are women that don't fall into the categories. But I think it is very helpful because it's based on a number, and the statistics would say this is common to a lot of men, this is common to a lot of women. And I think that's helpful. And it's a good discussion place, a good thing for couples to discuss together. Because if you follow those categories, it's going to really, really be helpful to you. If you don't follow those categories, at least it helps you reveal, well, what is a need that you have that's not listed here? Yeah, so it's a good book.
Love it. Well, Dr. Gary Chapman, I truly appreciate you jumping on here, and I'm so excited and honored that you're going to be visiting with us in Arkansas. When's the last time you came to Arkansas?
Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but my wife's family came from Arkansas.
Okay, all right. Well, I hope she can find a way to come with you. That would be such great fun. Karen and I are so excited to visit with you and be with you here, and I think and Dr. White as well, hopefully joining us, who again co-authored the book Appreciation at Work. This is something I believe, guys that are listening, I think this is going to become more and more important in years to come, not less important. And I think that's rare actually in books. The Bible maybe is a great, obviously, premise here, but there's not a lot of books that get more popular in generations to come. And I think with the way society is going, we have to figure out a way again to build those relationships and show our appreciation, because people have options. It's so easy. And the next generation isn't as worried about career mode, especially the younger ones. And so they want to be in places where they feel loved. So I'm really excited about the conversation, Dr. Chapman. If there's any way we can serve you, let us know. And I look forward to it.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed being with you all, and look forward to April and our time together there.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone else. Hope everyone has a blessed day. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.